The following program, Know the Cause, is paid for by Mediatrition Incorporated.
The set behind me is where I do a live show every Monday and Tuesday afternoon, 3 to 4 Central Time. You can ask questions. For example, today I'm going to give you 4 headings, right? I'm going to be talking about why are Americans overweight. I'm going to be talking about our entire anti-fungal program. I'm going to ask the question, why are Americans so inflamed? What makes bread rise? Does that same yeast make us rise? And finally, is there a fungal component to a disease like multiple sclerosis? And then joining me today is Dr. Trowbridge talking about toxic exposure, and finally my friend Aaron Porter talking about drinks that can help you overcome the sugar cravings. All that and more on this Know the Cause.
For the past 45 years, I have dedicated my life and my whole career to finding the root cause of disease. And I now know with certainty that we must play a role in our own health care. I'm a self-care advocate, and you know what? Every time you change your diet for the better, exercise, or swallow a nutritional supplement, so are you. Now welcome to Know the Cause.
My wife and I love these old movies. We have a special channel, Turner, that we subscribe to. And we saw a Philadelphia Story the other day, and it takes place, in the 30s or 40s. The point is, everybody in that movie is thin. Ruth and I watch these movies and think, look at how thin. The only people that put a lot of weight on were the bankers and the doctors. Everybody else was kind of rail thin. We loved that. And so I had to ask the question, why, 70 years later, are we so overweight in America? Let's go down that. Why are Americans so overweight? And here are some of the answers. Not enough sleep, stress, not enough exercise. Obesity is multifactorial. Fast foods. We don't know why. Could our doctors be making us overweight? I know that sounds silly, folks. These aren't bad people. I have a lot of friends who are doctors. They're really good people. But you become what you learn. And doctors learn a lot from pharmaceutical companies. So every answer has got to be written on a prescription pad. You know where I'm going with this. Is there an iatrogenic obesity epidemic? I explained that to you. MedicineNet.com says an iatrogenic illness is an illness that is caused by a medication or a doctor. Is there a doctor link or a medication link to the reason we're so overweight? Antibiotics and weight gain. This comes out of the American Gastroenterological Association, about 4 or 6 years ago. While early antibiotic use has been associated with a number of rare long-term health consequences, I'll say, new research links antibiotics to one of the most important and growing public health problems worldwide. And there's that word, obesity. Wait a minute. Antibiotics can induce obesity? Let's keep going. Scientific Magazine, 2013, The Obesity Plague in Antibiotics. Can the growing obesity epidemic be linked to overprescribed antibiotics? And in their defense, they kind of said, we don't know. Kind of weighed this one way, weighed it the other way, and we don't really know. There have been studies, folks, that go back to 1954, military recruits, Navy recruits. Half were given antibiotics every day and half were given a placebo. And those who took the antibiotics, by the time boot camp was over, a few months, they had gained a lot of weight, significant amount of weight, okay? How do antibiotics add weight to our bodies? Well, you and I know that antibiotics in the agricultural world are called growth promoters. We humans often receive tiny amounts of growth promoters over decades. The doctor prescribes them. And then we wonder why we're overweight. But is this our fault? Whose fault? Who can we blame this on? Lose the weight. There's a way to do this. Lose the weight and don't blame anybody, okay? I love this. This came out of Medscape.com a few years ago. Obesity. Should we be treating it more aggressively? Well, your pills got us into this. You think your pills can get us out? While lifestyle interventions such as diet and exercise are always the first approach, they have been unsuccessful in a large number of people, leading obesity experts to call for more aggressive treatment with bariatric surgery and new weight loss medications. And I wrote at the bottom, which diet's failing? A large number of people, and why? It certainly isn't a diet that starves fungus. Antibiotics, penicillium is the mold. The mycotoxin it makes is called penicillin. Okay, all of a sudden we take lots of antibiotics and we find that at 3 years old and at 6 years old and at 12 years old we're gaining a lot of weight. Your doctor isn't going to put those two together. Science does a pretty good job of doing it. But then what do we do? If we can't blame the doctors, who can we blame? USA Today newspaper 20 years ago. Government to parents, stop asking docs for antibiotics. You see, Mom, it's your fault. The government has a new strategy for reducing the unnecessary use of antibiotics. I'd say teach the doctors to say no, but they say persuade parents to stop pestering pediatricians to write prescriptions for runny noses. In other words, you see, it isn't the doctor's fault that too many antibiotics are being prescribed. Mom and Dad, it's your fault for asking for them. Teach a fourth-year medical student this one word, short word, and we all win. Are you sitting down? Are you ready for it? It's only 2 letters. I need an antibiotic because his nose is runny. Who's the doctor? The word is no. They're not going to change. Pharmaceutical companies are totally happy. So Mom and Dad, we have to be judicious. We have to make the decision. Hope that helps.
As a leading specialist in integrative medicine, I have to help people who've not been helped elsewhere. Well, what frustrates me could be what is keeping you suffering for years when doctors simply haven't a clue. Howdy, Dr. John Trowbridge here from Houston. I need to share what frustrates me when people suffer and die long before reaching older age. As a leading specialist in integrative medicine, I have to help people who've not been helped elsewhere. Well, what frustrates me could be what is keeping you suffering for years when doctors simply haven't a clue. A fellow in his late 30s came to see me when he realized that his career in oil refineries continuously exposed him to toxic chemicals. He felt crippled with various physical problems, and doctors didn't have a clue. Clearly, he was a victim of the yeast syndrome. His exposure to toxic chemicals and heavy metals affected his immune system, and combined with toxins from yeast, his health was failing at an early age. Over 30 years later, he's feeling quite well. Millions around the world are still searching, hoping to finally feel better. Some might claim that their problems are due to toxic exposures, not realizing the dangers of the yeast syndrome and other problems that it can cause. It is long past due to share with your doctor the books that Doug has written and watch his excellent shows. To recover from your problems, you need to know the cause. And you need to finally find a doctor who skillfully offers you choices now for better health. Until next time, this is the Yeast Doctor, reminding you that when life is your choice, failure is not an option.
You know, so many people write to me or get through me one way or the other, and they want to know what this program, this antifungal program is. Folks, I think I've found, while it's certainly not a panacea, it for many of you, I think most of you, a diet and certain supplements would really help you. Let me take 6 minutes here and try and define what this antifungal program is. So here we go. The antifungal program, an antifungal program has several tiers identifying the source. There's no sense in figuring out your lungs are filled with mold unless you realize it's coming from your house, because every time you go in there, it gets bad again. Number 2, stopping or killing the fungus or fungi, starving the fungi or fungus, and prevent recurrence, okay? That's what an antifungal program overview looks like. Now let's start here. Where did this fungal infection come from? Unlike bacterial or viral infections, fungal infections are sometimes difficult to accurately diagnose. Here's some suggestions. A moldy environment, be your office, you know, the kid's house, your house, but you inhale these mold spores and then they travel home with you and they grow in your lungs. Number 2, antibiotics or other medications, cereal grains, alcohol or nuts like peanut, dietary exposure. Okay, that's where these fungal infections tend to come from. If you live in a moldy home, here's what you'll notice. We went out to visit the kids, had a great time out in Nevada where they are, spent a week playing with grandkids and so forth. I never felt that good. Now, a psychologist would say, well, you're away from all your stresses, Doug, and that's why you felt good. I would say nonsense, because when I got home, all of my health problems, my sinus problems, my gut problems started again. My home is toxic. You have to start thinking that way, folks. Okay, stopping or killing fungus inside your body. Medications or supplements that stop fungal proliferation are called fungistatic medications, means to stop. Medications or supplements that kill fungus are fungicidals, it means to kill. Okay, our food supply can be both fungistatic, like yogurt, and fungicidal, like garlic. So we have an advantage. God made no mistakes, folks. For those of you, and you remember in Leviticus, when the Lord told Moses and Aaron, here's your land, I'm giving this to you with your possession, but if I, remember that, 33, if I put a spreading mildew in a house in that land, you got to tell somebody about it. And then that went further, if it's on your clothing, if it gets on your skin, etc. Mildew. Medical books rarely talk about it, but the Bible does. So I'm going with the Bible, okay? Fungicidal, God put food here to stop fungus from proliferating through your body or to kill it, okay? If you've got a serious problem, I'd ask doctor for nystatin and diflucan, nystatin and sporanox. One is a gut antifungal nystatin, the other is a bloodstream antifungal. Antifungal medications versus the naturals. Okay, many of our most serious illnesses like diabetes, heart disease, and even cancer can have a fungal basis. According to the Center for Disease Control, we encourage healthcare providers, that's your doctor, and patients, that's you, to think fungus when symptoms of infection do not get better with treatment. We gotta talk to our doctors. If I had a serious health problem, I'd ask my doctor for antifungal medications and simultaneously. Folks, you can take the medications till the cows come home, but unless you address the house or the alcohol that might be causing this, it's all for naught. You've got to starve fungus. I would change my diet immediately. It's not coincidental. The American Heart, American Diabetes, American Cancer offer diets that accentuate fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, and lean meats on their websites, in their diets. This adds many antifungal foods, and that is good. Okay, now, be careful. Just as diet can help you through a localized or a systemic fungal infection, diet can also contribute to it. I found the number one thing, let's talk about this. But I do find it odd that these same organizations tout alcohol in moderation annually. Let me just show you a picture. This is a glass of wine a day equals that many bottles of wine. And they say for women, that's okay. 58 bottles of wine a year, but look for men. Men can have 2 glasses of beer. 68 gallons of beer. American Diabetes, American Heart, American Cancer Association say, this is amazing, folks. You shouldn't, in my humble opinion, it is a mycotoxin, ethanol, a mycotoxin. You shouldn't be touching alcohol. And yet, all these websites are careful. If you drink, drink in moderation. 68 gallons of beer, and then you go to the doctor guy and say, man, my prostate feels swollen. Why is that? Gee, I have no idea, the doctor says. Let's move on. Meat, I disagree with these organizations regarding the limitations they recommend on meat intake. Americans add mycotoxin growth enhancers to the meat supply, and that, in my opinion, should be limited. Grass-fed, grass-finished meats offer health benefits opposed to the others. Antibiotics, you've heard of it. Zearalenone, you've heard of it. And then there's natural supplements. We'll land on this. Without knowing it, grocery and health food stores are filled with antifungal foods and supplements. Plant nutrients, phytonutrients, have powerful antimicrobial properties because God put them there. Why do supplements work so well to keep users healthy? Many vitamins, minerals, amino acid supplements are antifungal. Further, probiotics and fatty acids like caprylic acid in coconut and fish oils also have antifungal properties. Always work with a trained nutritional healthcare provider like a naturopathic doctor when assembling an antifungal lifestyle. Folks, it's really totally in your hands. And yet we run from doctor to doctor to doctor, sometimes very important. But when 2 or 3 doctors tell you they don't know what's wrong with you, what I want you to do is talk to one of them about fungus.
Hi, my name is Erin Porter, and here is a tip for staying on the Kaufman diet. Get yourself a really good blender, like maybe a Vitamix blender, some powerful blender, and you can make juices every day, which are so antifungal. I make soups a few times a week. You make them right there in the blender, and they're actually hot in minutes. And you can also make something called nice cream, so you can have berries and use your Kaufman-approved sweeteners like xylitol or monk fruit and stevia, and actually have a dessert that feels like you're eating ice cream. Well, it works for me, and I hope it works for you. For Know the Cause, I'm Erin Porter.
I was reading My Utmost for His Highest, Oswald Chambers, the other day. I love that daily devotional. And in it, he references this sentence: "The danger lies in observing the effect and believing it's the cause." We can use that same thing in medicine today. I want to walk down that aisle with you right now. We're finding in autoimmune diseases swelling. You and I call it swelling. Of course, it's something totally different in medicine. It's called inflammation in medicine. Do fungal infections cause swelling? Well, the answer is what makes bread rise? Yeast. That's a fungus. Yeasts are single-celled fungi, but multicellular fungi also cause swelling. Isn't that amazing, folks? How I wish our doctors knew this, because they see swelling and say, ooh, anti-inflammatories, drugs, drugs, drugs. When often, if you stop feeding fungus, the swelling goes away, okay? Research reveals how a fungal infection activates inflammation. This is on Science Daily in 2020. Scientists at St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital have identified the mechanisms behind inflammasome activation. It's a pro-inflammatory agent driven by infection with a fungal pathogen called Aspergillus fumigatus. So these inflammasomes are activated with fungus. Okay? It doesn't take a genius to figure out if fungus wasn't there, maybe inflammation wouldn't be such a problem. And that's what they discovered. Aspergillus fungus is ubiquitous. We are all exposed to it every second of every day. There's about 180 species of Aspergillus alone, but fewer than 40 of them are known to cause infections in humans. Aspergillus fumigatus, that which St. Jude's Children's Hospital discovered, is the most common cause of human Aspergillus infection, so says the Center for Disease Control. Okay, let's keep going because this becomes relevant. We know that Aspergillus fungus can cause human illness and death, but beforehand, does an Aspergillus infection manifest with symptoms of serious illness, maybe heart attacks, cancer, or Alzheimer's? You know, scientists would scoff at such a notion. But since they really don't have an idea of the cause of any of these tragic illnesses, I believe it's entirely possible. But do I have any proof? A dozen years, maybe 20 years ago, I picked up a magazine. Well, I'll show you the magazine cover in a minute, but do I have any proof? Scientists would agree that Aspergillus fumigatus causes inflammation. That's what St. Jude's just found out. Scientists agree that inflammation coexists with heart attacks, cancer, and Alzheimer's disease, and many other diseases. I'll show you on the next graphic. Scientists agree that Aspergillus fumigatus infection is toxic to human cells, blood, and nerves. So folks, it just makes sense to me that fungus coexists with swelling. They call it inflammation in tissues. So a long time ago, I picked up a magazine. Here's the cover of it, Time magazine. And that says The Secret Killer. And it was February of 2004. Wow, I am getting old. It says down below, the surprising link, and then in large yellow letters, between inflammation, heart attacks, cancer, and Alzheimer's and other diseases. The surprising link between swelling, and we're finding this more and more with most diseases. There's swelling. They take a C-reactive protein. It's an inflammation test. They can draw blood and tell if you're swelling inside. By the way, systemic fungal diseases also cause inflammation inside your body, and now you know. Be careful with fungus. It's a bad guy very often. Many years ago, I was asked to give a lecture on the neurotoxicity induced or caused by fungus. Can it be? I want to talk right now about a neurotoxic situation called multiple sclerosis. Dr. Dave Holland and I went to our friend, Dr. Joe Mercola, 20 years plus ago. We wrote an article called, and it's on the internet if you want to find it, Multiple Sclerosis, a Chronic Mycotoxicoses. Mycotoxins are poisons made by fungi. You can still find that article, and if you have MS or someone that you love has MS, is it a chronic mycotoxicoses? Question mark. You'll find it. Okay, multiple sclerosis and fungus. It can't be, can it? PISA in the year 2013, Candida yeast infections, yeast antigens elevate in MS patients. Benito in 2010, blood antibodies to a different form of Candida, this one Fumata, significantly higher in MS patients than with non-MS patients. And finally, in 2010, MS may be related to mycotoxins such as fumonisins and gliotoxins in Brain Research Bulletin in the year 2010. It's out there, folks. They're trying to figure out, gosh, we're finding yeast in the cerebrospinal fluid in the brain tissue of people with MS. What does that mean? They couldn't have a yeast infection. I'd have learned that in medical training. You learn bacteria, you learn virus. You didn't learn much about mycology, the study, clinical mycology, the study of fungus impacting the nervous system on your patients. The cause of MS remains unknown. Gosh, I could just snore. Cell proliferation said a dozen years ago. MS patients have a loss of sphingololipids from white matter in their central nervous system. Fungal poisons are known to disrupt sphingololipid biosynthesis. Statin drugs have proven effective in slowing the progression of MS. But why? You start putting all this information together and you form a hypothesis, as I have done many, many years ago, and I gave at this lecture. And a lot of doctors, it was so exciting. At the end of the lecture, so many doctors came up to me, I've never thought of this. I thought it was a virus. I thought maybe bacteria. I thought it was stress. It can be all those things. I think rarely. They think commonly, okay? Statins help MS patients. How would statin or cholesterol-lowering drugs help MS patients? Well, before they were called cholesterol-lowering drugs, they were called anti-fungal drugs. So says this great book. It's called Atherosclerosis, Hope at Last. It's written by Drs. Costantini and two other doctors with the World Health Organization. Great, great guy. He has since passed. Might MS be a fungal disease? Well, vitamin D deficiency seems to be a precursor to multiple sclerosis. Some research papers find that vitamin D is a viable treatment for MS, while others show that vitamin D supplements can prevent MS. Why is that? Folks, this is my final graphic, and I put it all together. Vitamin D fights MS, but why does it work? So says Drs. Constantini and Lars and Quick in this book. Vitamin D, whether taken in form of cod liver oil supplements or made naturally by our body from sunlight exposure, is anti-mycotoxins, and only fungus makes mycotoxins. So you've got, you can find MS in these patients' fluids. You find yeast in these patients' fluids with MS. You find that statin drugs help slow it, and you find vitamin D helps. Antifungal, fungus, antifungal. Think, if you have a neurotoxic disease, think about fungus. I really hope this helps you. That show probably yielded a lot of questions. Join me at knowthecause.com every Monday and Tuesday, 3 to 4 p.m. Central, or on my Facebook channel, knowthecause.com. Thank you for joining us today. God bless you. Do tell a friend. If they're sick, uncomfortable, talk to their doctor and know the cause.
The preceding program, Know the Cause, was paid for by Mediatrition Incorporated.